open that page, I'll search for my fix, find what I need in the deep dark abyss.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of AI Skeptics. We have Nobel Prize winner Daron Acemoglu with us today. He just came out with a new book. He's over there, all the way over at MIT, where he's
miles away.
Yeah, it's too far to do it in person, so we're doing it on Riverside. Daron, how are you doing?
Great, Kathy. This is a real honor to be on the podcast with you.
Oh my God, it's our honor.
Likewise.
Yeah. So we just have 3 questions for you, and they're each going to take about 10 minutes. The first one is, tell us about your new book. Introduce us to this wonderful book that you've written. It's coming out right now, I believe. So people should
in
go
3-4 days. By the time this episode is out, it may be out too.
Yes, I think it will be. And talk about, in particular, the chapter that involves social media, because that's, leads right into AI.
Yeah. So first of all, my book is entitled What Happened to Liberal Democracy? I view myself as a liberal, and I think liberal democracy is one of humanity's greatest achievements. Who would have thought that descendants of apes could build peaceful, complex societies in which people deliberate, they are equal at least in the political process and in front of the law, and that actually functions even when societies reach difficult times and challenges and crises. It is an amazing achievement in and of itself, but more so, we are all benefiting hugely from several things that liberal democracy has delivered over the years. Shared prosperity. Many people rightly were skeptical that we would be able to have an economic system out of which most people benefited from, and that's what we experienced for much of the 20th century. High quality and almost universally available public services, education, sanitation, health. Okay, fine. In the United States, health is a bit iffy, but in the great swath of things, infrastructure, those are all things that were aspirations of liberal ideas and were turned into practice and a reality by liberal democratic institutions. Now, the problem is that liberal democracy, I think, by many measures, is in crisis. People have lost their confidence in institutions. In surveys, they don't support democracy as they used to do. They think representatives don't speak for themselves. They are highly polarized. They want to record their discontent. And that's why they're voting for anti-establishment parties and candidates, even those that promise to bomb the system.
Yeah.
What happened? Well, my diagnosis is first and foremost about economics. Shared prosperity relied on an industrial economy in which, as companies invested and reached bigger markets and introduced new technologies, they also hired more workers, and that created a very surefire way of generating shared prosperity, because they had to pay higher wages to workers, especially under democratic institutions and trade unions, so that they couldn't shortchange the workers, coerce them, or cheat them. And that system worked for several decades. But now we are in a post-industrial economy where the skills of college-educated workers, managerial workers, are more valued, but more importantly, we have widespread automation that severed the link between firms doing well and hiring more workers. That is the economic aspect of it. And once shared prosperity was in tatters, that also meant that one of the big pledges of liberal democracy is maimed, and that was bound to create some sort of crisis. But I think the crisis, at least my diagnosis, is that the crisis is is even more severe because of the social changes that the post-industrial economy has unleashed, and those relate to new dimensions of social power and new balances in society. In particular, if you look at the coalitions that supported early liberal democratic institutions such as Roosevelt's, FDR's New Deal coalition, they were very broad. They had the left-leaning intellectuals of the time that played an important role, but also Southern Democrats who were very conservative, representing small businesses and very different geographic interests and very different philosophical priorities, and the trade union movement, labor movement, that was very important for mass support for FDR and his policies, and also for making sure that liberal democracy prioritized wage growth and employment growth and not let people starve unemployed in the streets. Since then, those with college education, people like us, postgraduate education, living in major cities, have become both more numerous, but also socially much more powerful, because we are playing a very important role in the economy, and other groups are being more sidelined by technology such as automation that targeted manufacturing workers, etc. At the same time, the college educated have also become more concentrated in where they live, who they fraternize with, who they marry, where they work. You know, the old industrial firm was a true melting pot. It had all the way from managers to engineers to technicians, white-collar workers, blue-collar workers, operators, custodial workers. Now, it's an exaggeration, but think of a company like Google in its first 15, 20 years where they're only engineers, or fast food restaurants where everybody's low paid, even the managers. And there aren't, many Harvard graduates or Stanford graduates working in McDonald's. So that segregation has also made cultural change very different in the post-industrial economy. One aspect of that is very important is how center-left parties, which were often the pioneers of liberal democracy's reforms, have been transformed. Many of those, in fact, all of them, including the Democratic Party in the United States, Labour Party in Britain, Social Democratic parties in Scandinavia and Germany, the Socialist Party in France, received significant support from people who broadly can be viewed as working class. No college degree, often working in manual jobs. And the college educated were lukewarm towards them. They supported conservative parties in greater numbers. That started changing quite dramatically in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, different dates in different places. In the United States, you can see the beginning with the so-called Watergate babies, or the Atari Democrats, who said, no, the old Democratic Party needs to change. It needs to have a much more tech-savvy, market-friendly ideology, and all of these things like unions, minimum wages, trade restrictions are bad policies, support for small businesses is unnecessary. That's indicative of a broader change that college graduates, postgraduates, especially those living well in major cities, took control of the center left. And that's universal across the developed economies for which we have data. It happens in Germany, in France, in Spain, in Italy, in the UK, in Canada, in the US. And that changed the face of politics quite significantly, especially at a time when college graduates started culturally diverging with the rest of the country. Now, all of those would have created major tensions, but two things really significantly exacerbated those tensions. One is that right-wing entrepreneurs, starting with talk show media, but also some politicians or speechwriters such as Buchanan, identified this emerging divide and started exploiting it. And then social media drove a truck through it.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, there's two dynamics here, right? One is the break in the economic linkage between growing firms and more jobs and more labor. And then there's this coincident break in the coalition making, like where you could actually have a diverse coalition representing a center-left viewpoint.
Exactly.
And in your writing in the What Happened to Liberal Democracy, the echo chambers of social media, which just arose out of that same innovation economy that broke the economic linkage with labor, it's like also changed the information environment so that those coalitions seem less likely to form now, those diverse
100%,
coalitions.
and the backlash against it became much more powerful. So once the center left, which is in many countries and is viewed in all countries as the establishment, started being dominated by the college educated, it changes policies, and it's also started putting more emphasis on cultural politics. This wasn't just an idle reaction. Many of the problems facing developed economies, which were becoming more complex, were more diverse, the discrimination and lack of inclusion that they suffered were real. And it was natural that people would have to try to grapple with them. But the way that I think more college-educated elites and under their guidance, center-left politics dealt with it was heavy-handed. But the more heavy-handed part, or the impression of greater heavy-handedness was also very much exploited by right-wing entrepreneurs that took the worst examples of that kind of heavy-handed behavior and started advertising it. Again, that started way before social media.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
AM, talk show, radio did that quite successfully. Rush Limbaugh, for example, was a master of it. Some newspapers did that. But social media, mega.
Right. I'll just jump in here and mention that, like, what you said about the sort of economic disparity and not needing workers as much was really, I learned that not firsthand, I would say, but like I studied that deeply during Occupy. Like, I was part of the Occupy movement, and I just remember that graph of like productivity versus wage, like in the whatever it was, 73 or whatever, just wages were flat, productivity kept going up. And I think Occupy was a direct result in a way that what you're describing. That's the first point. The second point is that about half the people I knew in Occupy are progressive lefties, and then the other half became MAGA. And they just got so disgusted by the setup, and they just got so disgusted by the, as you say, heavy-handed left, which was saying, "Oh no, but 401ks are the way to go. Don't argue for a pension, for God's sakes, or don't argue for universal health care." But we do have to move to the next topic because this is a short podcast.
But let me say one other thing.
One other thing
on social media, because it's very important for the future of AI and future of democracy. I think there is a likelihood, not a certainty, that all of the problems that social media created may get exacerbated by AI. And I think we still don't have the right analysis of social media. As I said, I'm a liberal, so I am all for free speech. So I do not want anybody's speech to be restricted. But that doesn't mean that algorithms should guide our news consumption and how we think about the world. So regulation of social media isn't the same as regulation of free speech. And I think we have to find a way of creating a better framework for social media and AI's communication and social information role while preserving free speech.
Daron, you're speaking our language. We just started. We started a 501c3 last year, and we're working on social media lawsuits and AI regulation lawsuits. AI lawsuits with an eye towards regulating. And I couldn't agree more that they are like the twins They are twins to each other. One of them
and
creates
simple
hatred.
policies would really be very effective. Like one, if you just did not have algorithmic feed, and like in the early days of social media, people just saw their friends and neighbors and their chosen media outlets posts, that would solve 90% of the problems.
I like your mention too of just freedom of speech, the notion of like speech shouldn't be restricted, but you write quite a bit in the latest chapter on amplification, algorithmic amplification. And that's sort of the flip side of restricted speech, but it seems not to be part of the free speech analysis currently. Maybe it should be.
Yeah. I think we just need to have that broad conversation. And there are people, like Elon Musk would be in that category. Of course, he does not have a coherent stance. It applies differently to the left versus the right, but he would say any intervention in social media is a violation of free speech.
Right.
I think that's a very hard position to defend.
But he also amplifies his own speech. So
exactly.
I think he's playing both sides of that
100%.
coin.
Let's not get into that.
Yeah, let's not.
I'll take on the as time cop for this episode. I will move us to our next topic.
Please do.
So pro-worker AI is a concept you discuss in the new book. And I'll ask you to talk about it generally and to describe what you mean by pro-worker AI, but I'll set it up just by mentioning one anecdote. You say maybe an electrician, like the field of electricians could be enhanced by a pro-worker AI that helps an electrician diagnose a problem and then do some experimentation on their own to figure out what's going on with this electrical problem. 100%. And I thought, well, that sounds very concrete and palpable, yet I have highly skeptical that will ever come out of our current AI innovation economy.
So am I, but let's dig into it to understand why. So let's take a step back. I think I want to make a number of statements or propositions so that we can break down the argument into bits. I think there is no disagreement with the next one, broadly speaking. AGI, artificial general intelligence, is a lodestar of our current AI ecosystem. Pretty much all of the major investments are either motivated by AGI or adjacent to it. That's number one. Number two, which may be more controversial, but I think it's true.
Well, we don't agree with number one already. So
you don't? Okay.
I know. No, absolutely.
Okay. Let me make this the second and third.
Please do. Yeah.
And then we can come back. Second is that the AGI agenda is ultimately about automation. If AGI means anything, it means machines getting much better than humans in almost everything. Mm-hmm. And if that happens, there is no way that you're not going to automate a massive number of jobs. And then the second one is, some people would disagree with it. In the tech industry, I have gotten pushback from that. The third, perhaps the most controversial, but that's the one I've spent most of my time arguing, there are many other things we can do with AI. AI can be a technology that helps workers gain additional expertise, enable them to do new things, enable them to be more innovative. And that's what I call pro-worker AI. And we can talk about in a second why I think pro-worker AI is both technologically feasible and socially desirable by going into some of the conceptual implications of different types of technologies, historical and empirical evidence, and what I see for where we're going and where we could go. But first, I would like to get your take on why you disagree with one.
Well, listen, I agree that AGI is what they all talk about all the time, and they say they care about, but I just think it's a red herring. It's a marketing. It's a marketing term, AGI, and like it's meant to impress. It's meant to promise. It's meant to have you dream, have investors and wannabe rich people and private equity, etc., just swoon. But really, what they care about is the second thing, which is automating jobs. Yeah. And
I think that's why I use the word AGI adjacent.
Yeah.
But
just to say, I think the real trick of this particular carnival barker crowd is that they want us to believe that it's inevitable.
100%.
It's inevitable that jobs are automated. To your point, like we don't agree at the most important point you made. I mean, we do agree with the most important points you made, which is that there's lots of ways to use AI.
100%. That's
could
very, very important.
Absolutely be supporting and helping people with it, but
Yes.
that's not what the big guys want us to think. The big guys want us to think, don't close your eyes for more than a second, because when you open them, like all of your jobs are going to be automated. And now they're pretending they don't want that because
Yeah, I know.
because they want to open data centers,
But the
right?
Well, look,
AGI
you and
is
I,
a way
Ian
to get
and
people.
Jake. Yeah, go ahead.
It's a way to get the AGI red herring too is a way to always have you come here, always come to Gemini, whether you have a health question, a financial question, or whatever kind of question, right? It's like extending the ecosystem of that company the same way that Google extended its ecosystem with Maps, then Mail, then Docs.
I agree
and
with all of
everything else.
that. And you, the two of you and I think, share a lot of the same assumptions, a lot of the same reasoning, a lot of the same evidence and conclusions. So if there's 1% that we disagree on, so let's talk about that just briefly. So while I agree that the more important thing is the inevitabilism,
Yeah.
and power that's conferred to them, both economic and social, by AI is very important to all of the leaders of tech.
Right.
I've spent enough time with several of them to know that, or to at least conclude, perhaps mistakenly, that they have drank their own Kool-Aid. So they do actually believe AGI. The details perhaps vary from Sam Altman to Elon Musk to Dario Amadei. And the next layer of engineers, the next layer of leaders may have some different perceptions. But they are all very much taken by this agenda. And if you look at their background, you also see why. They all come from the same milieu.
Yeah.
They all consumed the same
Science fiction.
They all were influenced by the same doom scenarios that look both scary and exciting and ask for a white knight to control the technology.
And maybe a god. Maybe
they
they're
all think exactly.
Yeah.
This is a great book by Megan O'Glibbin, God, Human, Machine, Animal, or whatever, Animal, Machine, which emphasizes that a lot of AI optimism has religious parallels, which I think is a brilliant.
Daron, we don't even disagree on that 1%. I'm sorry to say. We believe that they have drunk their own Kool-Aid, and we actually think that is a perfect segue to the third topic, because I keep on being fascinated and actually admiring of China's AI policy in this kind of bizarre way, because it's like weirdo land.
Yes.
I'm going to name two of them. Okay. I'm going to name two policies. Yes. One is very recent. China has outlawed, emotional dependency design from AI chatbots, and they do not want women in particular to fall in love with AI boyfriends and forget to have children because they're worried about children. Number one, no emotional dependency. Number two, they are outlawing AI replacing people as in their jobs. And if you get fired and replaced by AI in China, you're allowed to sue and get your job back and get damages. And that's happened. And so I would put these two rules together. First of all, it just goes absolutely against everybody in Silicon Valley. They're having a heart attack every time this comes up, right? Not to mention the DeepSeek open models. That's a separate thing that's giving them heart attacks. But going to your book, The Liberal Democracy, it seems to me that these two rules coming from China are more pro-liberal democratic than anything we're seeing from Silicon Valley. What do you think?
Look, very interesting. So I could talk about this for hours.
Well, talk about it for 10 minutes.
We only have 10 minutes. So I'm going to apportion that into 6-7 minutes to answer your question, but let me take one step back.
Yeah.
First of all, let me go back to what pro-worker AI is.
Yeah.
Pro-worker AI is using AI's information technology capabilities so that we create new tasks, new capabilities for workers that not just makes their jobs more interesting, more dignified, but also more productive, because they can do the more creative things that are right now very, very hard for AI models to do, and probably will remain hard in the medium term. And when you look at history, whenever you see periods of rapid wage growth and employment growth, you see new tasks, new things for workers created by new organizations, new sectors, and new technologies. So pro-worker AI is both feasible, because it's in the nature of AI models to have those capabilities if we develop them that way. And second, it's also socially desirable for shared prosperity, for defending our democracy, for creating a more fair society, for avoiding all the backlashes that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Daron,
But it's not the direction we're heading in. So that's why the Chinese discussion is very important. Second, I have to put another preface. I have been a very consistent critic of the Chinese system for over 20 years. My books are not translated into China. They're all censored. I have no relationship with Chinese government officials, and I am not generally that welcome in China.
Yeah, I'm no fan of that government whatsoever.
Yes, exactly. So you have to bear that in mind, because next I'm going to criticize the American government. Our current policy of viewing everything with China as zero sum is just insane.
Just dumb.
And it walks into a trap that I think Silicon Valley has set. And I often say, if China did not exist, Silicon Valley would have had to invent it.
Yes.
It's such a great foil for them to avoid regulation, to push whatever agenda they want. And the funny thing is that there is a lot for us to learn from China, and for China to learn a lot from us. And moreover, any global regulation or guardrail for AI requires US-Chinese collaboration, cooperation, as does world peace, climate change, dealing with pandemics and all of that. Now, what is it that China is behind? They are clearly behind in large language models. The gap may be 8 months or 16 months. There is some debate. May be easy to close, may not be easy to close. Distillation may be important, may not be important. Those are secondary. But there are 3 things that China is well ahead of us. And that's very important to note. None of it is pro-worker AI. The Chinese government has not been a friend of workers, but they might be getting closer to it than the US. Number 1, they have put electronic technology, electronic commerce, and AI tools in the hands of consumers for much, much longer. And they have collected much more data about how consumers use, how consumers interact with AI. Second, they have had a great emphasis on getting AI as well as robotics into the production process. China has a major, very big manufacturing sector. And those manufacturing firms are all experimenting in getting AI into the production process. That is not easy, and American firms are not doing it. American manufacturing firms are not at the forefront of using AI, nor can they be, because America has a shortage of engineers, and this is very engineering intensive, and all of the engineers are working for Silicon Valley on AGI or large language models, etc. Third, there is the rhetoric in the United States that AI cannot be regulated. China has methods that I don't agree with, has objectives that I don't agree with, but they clearly demonstrate AI can be regulated. From the beginning, the Chinese government controlled the data that AI companies used. It determined the direction in which they would develop AI, often for surveillance by doing procurement contracts. It has, at various points in time, done things that would be even unthinkable in the United States, like banning people playing video games, saying that you cannot lay off workers, regulating how people use chatbots, and many other things. While you may disagree with their methods, it is clear that there is room for regulation if we want to. And
Right.
there is
It's
a
like,
lot more that we can learn from China, and they will learn a lot from us.
talk about heavy-handed when you say like chatbots can't pursue emotional dependent relationships with users. But my question to you is there a path, a technical path, as opposed to a policy or regulatory path to actually make, for example, pro-worker AI a realistic possibility? Like,
Absolutely.
there is
Absolutely.
a technical path?
There's a technical path. In fact, it's an easy path. So going back to the examples that we were talking about, I would say these possibilities are so much within the frontier that anybody could develop them with enough resources. In fact,
Anybody
because
could,
no
but
tech
nobody is.
with no tech companies doing it, I am actually developing it in 2 fields and going to test them using shoestring budget, 100,000 of the budget that Anthropic, OpenAI, or Google would put to any sector. Because what you want from AI in these applications isn't that complicated compared to very complex reasoning and large language models becoming very, very competent jack of all trades. Those are much harder tasks. Whereas the models we have, even we had like 6-7 years ago, are amazingly effective at ingesting a huge amount of information and then deciding which kind of information is relevant with what context. That's the heart of an information technology that's so relevant for creating pro-worker AI, because you're not going to take over the task. You're going to give better information to workers, and workers are going to use it, and they're going to do the experimentation. They're going to use the human judgment. That's really reduces what you need to do.
Well, okay, I agree with you. And I would argue that a lot of this AGI stuff is repackaging stuff that we already have in certain contexts. Because they wanted to have a solution to everything, the general large language model stuff. But like, if you look at like Amazon warehouse stuff, you can think of that as old AI.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Amazon developed its own fit for purpose, like everything, warehouse AI, and it tells warehouse workers exactly where to go, how much time they have to do it, blah, blah, blah. In some sense, you could think that it's supportive AI for the worker, but if you ask a warehouse worker, that's not actually improving their lives. And I guess that's really my point. Like, our favorite book is Alexander Braverman's Labor and Monopoly Capital. I'm sure that you know of it. And my favorite vignette from it, when I've been repeating it a lot, is like when secretaries were like tested with the new computer processors, they didn't think, oh, I'm so glad I have a computer processor now instead of a typewriter because it's going to support me doing so much more productive work. They thought, oh, now I'm going to have to do even more work in 8 hours. I'm still going to be here for 8 hours. I'm just going to be working on a different kind of technology. And I guess that's really what I keep coming back to with like worker AI is like, is it actually better? Is it a better job after you have that?
Details matter. Details matter so much. So that's why I said China is doing a lot to integrate AI and robotics into the production process, but it's not necessarily pro-worker AI. A lot of it is automation, some of it is surveillance, some of it is increasing the speed with which the line moves, but some of it is also going to benefit workers because they have such a shortage of workers that they need to get the best out of the workers as well. The Amazon warehouses are an example of integrating AI into the production process, but clearly not pro-worker. That kind of surveillance is not consistent with pro-worker. But that doesn't mean that. Sorry?
Earlier, you were like, in discussing pro-worker AI, you said it could be dignity enhancing for jobs.
Yes.
What would make an AI application dignity enhancing for a job? Okay,
so let me give you 4 examples of pro-worker AI that are very, very close to being reality because some of either I have worked with some groups to develop it or some companies themselves have developed it. One is a tool for helping disabled workers understand language and visually much better. That's clearly a pro-worker. You can get they can do much more meaningful work, and it is clearly dignity enhancing. That is very feasible. It was developed several years ago, and it can be improved if we put more resources into it. Second is the electrical engineer or field technician example, electrician example, where you actually enable novice electricians to be trained and perform much more complex, much more creative, much more judgment necessary requiring tasks, which are also more productivity enhancing for society, and they will be paid more and there will be more need for them. So that's, in that sense, dignity enhancing. So that technology, or one version of it, is developed by a company called Schneider Electric, which is a medium-sized company in Europe, and they have a shoestring AI budget, and they don't have any of the top AI scientists, and that's why their technology is not that advanced, but it, again, is a prototype that works. A third is education. Rather than sideline teachers, we can actually give teachers AI tools that will enable them to improve dynamically, flexibly their lesson plans and the way that they organize the classroom, getting closer to a cost-effective version of individualized education, which has generally been found to be much more effective, especially with students who are falling behind. That is what we have developed, and it's not that hard. And again, that was a shoestring budget. A fourth one is nurses. Nurses are so central to the care process, and right now they cannot make decisions, many important decisions, because they don't have the information, they don't have the training. For some of them, licensed practitioner nurses are an exception to this. But imagine that you have AI tools for nurses to take more initiative, and that would be improving care, improving their dignity, improving the meaningfulness of their job. And just these examples could be multiplied.
Oh my God, I wish we had another 10 minutes for me to argue with you a little bit more about those examples, but we'll have to leave it here. Darren, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Jake.
And thanks for your book. Fun. Everybody should go out and buy it right now.
Thank you. I would love that.
All right. And we'll have a link to it in the liner notes. Thanks again, Darren. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
See you guys next time on AI Skeptics.